الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين الحمد لله الأول قبل كل أول والآخر بعد كل آخر الحمد لله المتجلي لخلقه بخلقه والظاهر لقلوبهم بحجته ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه وحجته سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات. Inshallah, today we will speak about insights from the 17th Juz of Qur'an. And of course, part of our foundation is the 17th dua of the blessed day of the month of Ramadan. And subhanAllah, when we read the dua for the 17th day of Ramadan, and of course, coming after the 16th day and that dua, and after the 16th Juz, subhanAllah, we see this relationship between the du'as on one hand, that how the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam, as they guide us to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how they're helping us and guiding us to build upon our spirituality and upon our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how it correlates as well with the Qur'an, with that juz of the Qur'an. On each day we recite the dua. Just so that we are very clear about this, yesterday the dua, we were asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to place us in the company of the abrar, the company of those who are righteous, who their actions are done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to keep us away from bad company, the company that will take us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the dua for the 17th day of Ramadan, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us ihdina ila salih al-a'mal, to guide us towards the best of actions. So we see the correlation here. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for righteous friends and companionships. But then on this day, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have righteous actions. And on one hand, this what it tells us is that, well, even if we have good friends, even if we have the right friends, that doesn't necessarily mean that we ourselves will be righteous. But we ourselves also have to act upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. We ourselves have to be those individuals who take that example and implement it in our lives. So, and this is what we can say is natural. Many people saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many people saw Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima Zahra, Hassan Hussein, but simply by seeing them, simply by being in the companionship with them, did that mean that they became like Amir al-Mu'mineen? They became like Rasulullah? They became like Fatima Zahra or not? Yes, these individuals served as role models. They served as good companions, but it doesn't mean just simply by some osmosis that, oh, hey, I'm sitting beside Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so then I'll have the akhlaq of Rasulullah. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that The Prophet is uswatun hasana. He is the best example for you. He's the best role model for you. But that means that we have to make effort and we have to make actions to follow that example. Even the Prophet, he said when he was teaching the Ummah Salat, he says, Salli kama ra'aytumuni. He says, pray as you see me praying. Doesn't mean that simply, oh, hey, you see me praying and, oh, yes, Salat is a good thing. And you see the benefit that we're gaining from Salat and connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's the extent that you accompany the Prophet. That, oh, I see him praying. He says, no, you also stand up and pray. Salli or sallu kama ra'aytumuni. That pray as you see me praying. So you have to make that effort and you have to make that action. And this is exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he begins Surah Al-Hajj with as well. He says, Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum. That, oh, mankind, humanity, have fear or have consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, taqwa is not something that comes by osmosis. Taqwa comes by action. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That fasting has been prescribed for you, an action. That do this action, fast. And when you do that action, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that perhaps you may become God conscious. Perhaps you may gain that taqwa. So this dua of the 17th day of the blessed month of Ramadan builds on the 16th dua. And each and every dua the same way, that if we truly examine it. And of course, our time of explaining these things, and hopefully again, just simply sitting, listening to me talk, or any scholar talk for that matter, that it has its benefit, but the greater benefit is that when we actually take up the action, oh, well, let me go read that dua. Let me go ponder and reflect upon that dua. Let me go read the 17th Juz of the Qur'an, each of the Juz of the Qur'an. And then we reflect upon it and we ponder upon it. Simply sitting in a majlis, and even our teachers, they would say that. They say, you know what? Yes, in the lessons that we gain in the house, they said, look, the reality is, and the teachers, he's giving you very beautiful gems and of knowledge and nuggets of knowledge. He says, but the reality is what you learn, he says, from this class. Although I'm giving you all this information, I'm pointing you to all these references, this and that. He says, but the reality is what do you retain from that? He says, only about 10%. He says, the rest of it, whether you gain 50% of your knowledge, or if you kind of measure or meter, if you reach to a 50% percentile level of understanding and knowledge, or whether you reach to 70, 80, or 100%, he says all of that, the rest of it is your effort. Not simply to sit in the class and, oh, hey, I'm writing these things down, but then I don't go back and I don't read them, I don't study them, I don't examine them, I don't come up with my own questions. Oh, well, why is this? How is this? Or how can I achieve this? You have to make that effort. So simply being in the company of the righteous doesn't mean that you will become righteous. You have to make effort to become among the abrar. You have to make effort that your actions and your a'mal, as we pray in this day, are salih, they are righteous a'mal. And of course, in the 17th Juz of the Qur'an, which covers Surah Al-Anbiya and Surah Al-Hajj, we get good examples, great examples. So that's the first thing we ask for, and I'll continue on that point. But I want to just simply quickly point to the second thing we ask for in the 17th dua of the day of Ramadan. The second thing is we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill our hopes and our desires. Al-hawa'ij wa amal. That, ya Allah, and of course we all have hopes, desires, we all have needs. Hawa'ij are needs. Amal are, desires, our wish list. Oh, I wish this, I wish that. But then we have, besides our wish list, we have those things that, oh, well, this is something I really need. And quite often we come in this blessed month of Ramadan again, like I said, with that list, with our list of needs, with our list of wishes that, I wish things were this way, I wish I had this. So we ask for that on the 17th day in this dua. And so that means that also in the 17th Juz of the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He guides us in these two manners. When it comes to having righteous actions, as I said, that one of those surahs that we recite on the 17th, in the 17th day, that 17th Juz, is Surah Al-Anbiya. And in Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about 16 different prophets in Surah Al-Anbiya, directly and indirectly. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's not mentioned by name, but indirectly there's an indication to him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us all of these examples. And of course, He hasn't forgotten the sisters either, because He mentions Maryam, salamullah alayha, who, though we don't classify her as a Nabi, as a prophet, but she had maqam al-nabuwa, which is the station of prophet, or station of prophecy. Is that, again, she was one of those individuals that, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel to speak to her. So just, I'm not going to go through this issue, because that is a entire speech in itself. What does it mean to have maqam al-nabuwa, for example, or maqam al-wilaya, or imamat, like Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha? That her maqam, her station was a station of imamat, of wilaya. But we don't call her that imam, but her station was a station of wilaya. And likewise, Maryam salamullah, her maqam is maqam al-nabuwa. So she's also mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya as an example, not simply for women, but for men as well. That individual who, and all of these Anbiya and Maryam, who were righteous, and their actions and their deeds, they connected them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the commonalities we find, that they connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is communicating with these individuals, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is entrusting them with a divine mission. A divine mission on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, that if, and again, this is the beauty about our deen and our faith, and what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahlul Bayt, what all of the Anbiya, what they were teaching us, that yes, if we elevate our stations where we to the point that we connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then yes, we may have some divine mission that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places in our hand. Not to the level of the Anbiya or Maryam or Fatima Zahra, but we may have some sort of mission that we would have to undergo, that we carry out, that we take out, to be perhaps an example. At the very least, an example for our own family. To be that righteous individual for our own family. And this is something that's very important. This is also one of the verses that comes in the surah, where the verse about telling your Ahlul Bayt, telling your family as-salat. Calling them for salat. In fact, even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, based on that verse, and it was revealed, the Prophet of Allah, he would go to the house of Fatima, house of the Ahlul Bayt, and he would say, as-salat, as-salat, ya Ahlul Bayt an-Nabuwah. These are people who didn't miss their salat. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brought this verse in Surah Al-Anbiya, that call your family to salat. As-salat, as-salat, ya Ahlul Bayt an-Nabuwah. Sometimes we may, and I've heard this sometimes, again, I have a family member who may be in the house, and, should I wake them up for salat or not wake them up for salat, or should the Prophet would call his Ahlul Bayt, as-salat, ya Ahlul Bayt an-Nabuwah. And there should be no shame that within our household, within our home, that we call our family that, hey, it's time for salat. Wake up, it's time for salat. That salat or that house, and this is one of the riwayat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says that house where the salat is not established, so it removes the barakah from that house. Even if there's one individual, it's not, he says there's some barakah that this household could be benefiting from, but because salat is not established, and this is not to say you have to make Salatul Jama'ah, no, Salatul Jama'ah is good in the home. But at least if the salat is established, then that house will have barakah, it will have blessings. But when we fail to make our home a home of salat and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of the barakah is removed from that house. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be, or at least have those righteous actions, and there are many righteous actions, to make sure that we're fasting, that we're praying, that we're making dua, that we're reading the Qur'an. And we pretty much know of these good or righteous actions and deeds, but so I'm not going to go down a list of those deeds, list of those actions, but I want to just simply talk about some of the effects of those deeds. A'mal as-salih. Righteous actions, righteous deeds. When we are righteous, when we are good, and when we're making effort to be good. And this is not to say, oh, hey, overnight that we change and become the best of people, but simply begin and make that effort. And when we begin and we make that effort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help, surely. And so the effects of being righteous or having righteous actions or deeds, or at least making that effort to make righteous, to be good, to be righteous people, to be salih, one of the effects is it gives you a peace of mind. It gives you that tranquility. One, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, oh, I've done my duty, I fulfilled my responsibility. It also gives you peace of mind as well that, oh, you know what? If I'm righteous, if my actions are good, salih, when I engage in business or interaction with someone, then I know I haven't wronged this person. So I don't have to fear that this person would try to gain some sort of revenge or to trick me or to be deceptive. No, because when I interacted with this individual, I was honest. I was straightforward. I wasn't trying to trick this person, deceive this person. No, straightforward. So it gives you that peace of mind. Another thing that happens when we have righteous actions is that it connects us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It pulls us in the direction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that many of those who have truly connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they've stated. Because you see that whenever we do anything, whenever we make any choice in our life, we have a choice that, oh, am I going to do this the right way? Or am I going to do it the way that, however I want to do it? Am I going to do this action in a way that, oh, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who will be pleased with me if I did it this way? Or does our ego get in the way? You know what? I'm not going to do it this is the way I want it. This is the way it's going to be. And end of story. But if we are trying to be righteous, the first thing we would think about is, oh, how do I do this action? How do I say what I want to say? Is it in a manner that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with me? Or is it in a way that, I'll be pleased with myself? Why? Because I think I've done it correctly. I don't care what anybody else says, but our main concern is not with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we do it the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do it, then it will pull us in the direction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the urafa, he wasn't among the ulama. Rajab Ali Khayyat. Again, I'm sure many of you have heard of it, especially those who are Iranian. Rajab Ali Khayyat. Again, he had a choice to make. Do I go and I fall into this trap where I can definitely follow my desires? Or I'm in this situation with this mahram that do I escape out of it, which I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with it. And in his memoirs, this is what he said. He was like, look, he was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I have this choice either to be like Yusuf or, hey, be like maybe any common other person. Just, hey, go after what any young person would perhaps go after if they're not thinking in the right way. He says, but I thought it for a moment. I says, well, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with that, but let me test Allah. Allah, you want me to do this, so then I'm going to test you. I'm going to do this, and I will see what happens. And from that moment, that's when it opened his spiritual eyes. To the point they said that even at times he would hear people in the grave. He would know what their state was in the grave. That whether that person's barzakh was like paradise or their barzakh was like hell. All from the choice that he made. And that choice can either connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or separate us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, that is, again, the meaning of taqwa. When we truly look at this meaning of taqwa, whenever Allah says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu taqullah, Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum. Taqwa, and this is why I translate it as God consciousness, not simply as fearing Allah, or even, because it's not a fear that you're fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath. Or piety, which seems to be a little bit obscure. In fact, even if we look up the word in the Arabic to Arabic dictionary, taqwa, what exactly does it mean? It says, maqam bayna al-khawfi wal-raja. It is a state between hope and fear. And the best way to explain that station between hope and fear is just think of a little child. That perhaps maybe you were that child one moment, or if you have your own children, that if your child separates from you, like in a busy market, busy store, what happens to that child? You see that child starts running around crying. That's one thing. That's the fear. Crying. Fear that they will never meet their parent again, that they're separated, that they're lost. But while they're crying out of fear, they still have hope. And where is that hope? Because they're still constantly calling their parents, Mommy, Daddy, whoever they came with. And they're looking. That's taqwa. That is God consciousness. So it's not fear of the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear that you will do something that, my connection is separate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've been disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So taqwa is to have that fear of separation, but always have hope that perhaps that tawbah I made, astaghfirullah, will reconnect me. So one of the benefits or the effects of having amal salih, it will connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another benefit that it will cause our sins to be forgiven, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brings in the 17th Juz of the Qur'an, Inna al-hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at, that by doing good deeds, it removes those bad deeds. It removes those sins. A very beautiful point to make, thinking among those good deeds that we do, and inshallah, every day as we make salat. Right? 5 times a day. And then the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afsalatu wasalam, they said that, if a person does something wrong, does a sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered that the angels, they don't write this bad deed, this sin, for 7 hours at least. Gives you time to make tawbah between 7 hours. When we think about it and we truly calculate it, that why 7 hours? Because if we're awake during the day, between each of the salats, there's not more than 7 hours. You get up, you make your fajr, then not too long after that, some hours later, 4, 5, 6 hours later, you're making dhuhr. And then asr, then maghrib and isha. There's not a 7-hour gap between each of those salats. So that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the mercy of Allah. This is the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When He says, Al-hasanat yudhibna, inna al-hasanat tudhibna sayyi'at, that your good deeds, a good action. What action is better than salat? Salat is one of those a'mal, inshallah. I don't want to take up too much time. Well, it was one of those a'mals that doesn't change in every moment we make salat. Whether you're traveling, whether you're present, even when we read the ahkam, there's a salat of the gharik, the salat of the person who's drowning. But this comes from those person who is, again, is conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person is drowning, says, there's no way I can't save myself. I know I'm drowning. I know I'm going to drown. But at that point, that person makes their final salat. There's no ruku and sajda, but they're doing by ishara. They're going down. To this extent, that salat is important. So salat, or the hasanat actions, it does it away with as-sayyi'at. So one of the other benefits or effects of righteous actions or deeds is that it prevents a bad death. And I'll just give you this just for the sake of time, that in the ru'ayat of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that if you want to make your transition from this life to the next life easy, he says, after each salat, read a little bit of Qur'an. Alhamdulillah, we are used to reciting dua, and dua is good. This is not to say this replacing dua, but read just something of the Qur'an. He says that if you read just a little bit of Qur'an after each salat, that your transition from this life to the next life, he says it will be an easy transition by the barakah of reciting the Qur'an. This is again one of those a'mal salih, righteous deeds, righteous actions connecting to the Qur'an. Righteous deeds and actions also bring about prosperity, economic prosperity. This is one of the things that I told Sayyid Qadi, he had told to many individuals, and particularly I told Allama Tabatabai, like when he first encountered Tabatabai, he says, if you want dunya, make salatul layl. If you want the akhirah, make salatul layl. One of the benefits of salatul layl is that it's good not only for our akhirah, even for our dunya. So doing al-hasanat, it brings about these effects. But unfortunately, as Imam Sadiq alayhi hafizatuhu, one hadith, but when we truly reflect upon what the Imam is saying, really kind of makes us want to really reflect our actions. He says, "May yamutu min adh-dhunub aktharu mimma yamutu bil ajal." He says, those individuals who pass away from this world because of their sins, he says, it is more than those who pass away from the time, their ajal. And what this means that everybody has their ajal. Everybody has a time period. This is the expand of your life. But sometimes our disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually shortens our lifespan. Shortens our lifespan. So Imam Sadiq he says, unfortunately, and again, this is by that knowledge of unseen that the Ahlul Bayt have, he says, unfortunately, a lot of people don't live their life to that, you can say, that expectation that they should. Why? Because they've disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so their life has been shortened. And sometimes it's been shortened out of the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that person doesn't continue disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes it's a rahmah, and this is what we find in the hadith of Ahlul Bayt. Sometimes that person is disobeying, and then they make tawbah. And when they make tawbah, then Allah says, okay, let's take your life. Why? Because He knows that this person is going to return back to that disobedience. So Allah takes his life while they're in a state of purity. But had that person been obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the things, Salatul Layl also prolongs your life as well. Then their life would have been longer. Enjoying the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Gaining more thawab and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, in these next few minutes, inshallah, the time is very short. And even one person was like, "Oh, these speeches are very short." But alhamdulillah, the main thing, as I said, is to not simply to sit and listen, but to truly, again, go back, read the du'as of Ahlul Bayt. And unfortunately, this is one of the things we don't do. We read the Dua Joshan Kabir, Salatul in the night of Qadr. Oh, we read this dua, we read that dua. MashaAllah, we read this dua. But have we actually studied the duas that we've gotten from the Ahlul Bayt? Dua Joshan Kabir. Dua Abu Hamza Thumani. On one hand, yes, by reading it, we have a connection. But in each and every one of those du'as, there's a connection. They're gems. They're gems for us to change ourselves, to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if we don't examine, we don't study those du'as, then we got the reward and barakah for reciting. But how much truly have we benefited from that dua? Oh, mashallah, we read this whole juz of Qur'an, but how much have we truly benefited from reading that juz of Qur'an? Did we gain anything from it that is going to change our lives, make us better people, make us among the righteous, make us among those true followers of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad? That's what's important. Particularly also as it relates to that second thing which we make dua for in the 17th day of Ramadan. That, oh Allah, grant me aqlili fihi al-hawaiji wal-aman. That, oh Allah, grant me my needs and my desires, my wants, my wishes in this day. In order to gain those needs, sometimes our wishes, sometimes we have to be very attentive, sometimes to time, to place, to method. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Because all of these things have its effect. So in gaining our needs, sometimes the place is very important. For example, Mecca or Medina. Our salat in Mecca and Medina is different from our salat here or anywhere else. And so if we are blessed to go to Mecca, we're blessed to go to Medina, that when we're in that place, we shouldn't take it as, oh, this is like praying anywhere else. This is like any other place. No. These places are special places. Very different places. And this is also one of the reasons why that no matter where you come at from in the world, that if you go to Mecca and Medina, so you have a choice. And what is that choice? That either you pray 2 rakats, for example, for the Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha, because you're a traveler, or you pray full, as if you're home. Mecca and Medina is the home of the believers. That's why you have that choice. But if we don't perceive it as our home, we're like, oh, well, hey, I'm traveling. Oh, I get to relax. I'm praying 2 rakats. Alhamdulillah, yes. You've met your requirement based on the Sharia. But have you really met that spiritual requirement that Ya Allah, yes, this is my home, Ya Allah. This sacred place that you've placed here in Mecca or Medina. That I truly feel home. And the harams, the haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the haram of Imam Hussein, Abu al-Fadl Abbas, Bain al-Haramain, between the haramain, the haram of Ali ibn Musa Rida, and truly if you go in these spaces, if you're attentive, you're aware, you'll feel the difference. And there are other places. I'll just mention one place that, just one place that I'm going to tell you this from experience. And this was the Masjed of Ayatollah Bahjat, rahmatullah alayh. Masjid of Ayatollah Bahjat was not like any other masjid. It was small. He never changes since the beginning of revolution. But if you wanted to go and pray there, you had to go at least an hour ahead of time if you really wanted to get a spot. I remember the first time I went there. So we were waiting. I was like, oh, wow, we're here at the Masjed of Ayatollah Bahjat. I didn't have any expectations, but, oh, hey, Ayatollah Bahjat, we know this is, Arif, Billah. But subhanAllah, when he walked into that masjid and the salat began, the atmosphere changed. Completely different. And this is something that, it wasn't just me who felt this, that when we finished the salat, other people who had never been there before, my friends, I asked her, I said, did you feel a difference? I said, yeah, there was a difference. The whole atmosphere changed. It was like some energy that was like popping through all of us. And I was like, subhanAllah. So sometimes the place where we make dua and we're trying to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to ask for our needs, it makes a difference. Sometimes it's the timing. Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all these times. Dhul Hijjah. He's given these times, these moments, Laylatul Qadr, that is not like any other time. But sometimes we treat it like any other time. No, these times are not like any other time. And we shouldn't go into it thinking, oh, well, this is just like any other day. Or this night is like any other night. It is not. Our method, and with this, what dua do we recite? How we recite it? Are we reciting it like any other dua? Are we reciting it where that dua is really penetrating our heart? Are we reciting it truly to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We're reciting in a state that we're our heart is broken, and in Farsi say, dil shikaste, or with khushu'. It makes a difference. And subhanAllah, this is one of the, again, amazing aspects about Laylatul Qadr. It's a night of musibah where part of that night, what happens? We cry, we weep for a minimum. We weep for that tragedy. But when we weep for that tragedy and then we make dua after that, subhanAllah, that dua should not be like any other dua. And it won't be. That time is not like any other time. But sometimes we treat it as any other time. Oh, I heard that musibah before. Oh, it's not like any other time. Unfortunately, we don't perceive that. I'll end with this, and this is last thing I will say. I know I'm a little bit over half an hour. But something for us to reflect upon and think about in this coming into the nights of Qadr. And one of the things that we most desperately need in this time, and that is the return of Imam Zaman al-Jafar al-Sharif. That when we look at the atrocities, the injustice, the genocide, all that's going on in this world, there's nothing greater we should need that we have. And there should be no greater wish list that we have than the return of Imam Zaman al-Jafar al-Sharif. And inshallah, in these nights of Qadr, let us pray for that. And in fact, let us make a special prayer, a special action for that. And that is one that some of our ulama, some of the Urfa, they said that, listen, that if you want to gain your needs, again, one of the persons who, if he prays for us, that need will come about. And that's Imam Zaman al-Jafar. But how to get the attention of Imam Zaman al-Jafar? Make tawassul with Sayyida Narjis, the mother of Imam Zaman. Do tawassul with Sayyida Narjis. Because, again, the Ahlul Bayt, they love their mothers. They're going to respect their mothers. Paradise is at the feet of their mothers. Make a tawassul with her. Ayatollah Mujtahidi, he said that he had learned this from one of the Urafa. He says, and every time that he asks someone to, look, if you have this need, that make this tawassul Sayyid Narjis. One person who wasn't having children, he says, recite the Quran, do a khatam al-Quran, read the entire Quran, and then give the reward of reciting that Quran to Sayyid Narjis and ask for your need. Tawassul, Sayyid Narjis. This is how it came about. One time he was given some khums, and he was going to take it to Qom, to Tabrizi, and the route, something happened. He lost it. He still had the bag that he put the money in, but the money was gone. It was an imanat. He said he made 1,000 salawat and donated the thawab to Sayyid al-Narjis. He said, subhanallah, he says, that night someone came and gave him the money. So let's make this tawassul with Sayyid al-Narjis, salamu alayha. And particularly, we may all have our own different needs, but the need that we have as a collective, as a ummah, as mankind, as humanity, is a need for Imam Zaman, need for justice in this world. And so let's make tawassul with Sayyid al-Narjis and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask her to ask Imam Zaman, because he also prays for that faraj, that this faraj comes soon. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا واقضي حوائجنا واشف مرضانا ورحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشيرين بين يديه وتحت لواء بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين.